They speak liberal, they have liberal friends, and then they go online and they are a white supremacist.
This is Vera Papisova. She spent the last year dating far-right men in New York City for a story for Cosmopolitan magazine.
They're the most insecure men I've ever sat down with. It was really difficult to have some of these dates because they were so insecure, because they don't really know who they are and they don't know how to figure that out.
Go run and pick up Cosmo. Independent journalist Vera Papisova set out to learn more about the resurgence in so-called anti-feminist and traditional right-wing beliefs about women and relationships. And her conclusions may just surprise you. Papisova originally wrote a piece for Cosmo about her experience spending an entire year on a conservative dating app as a liberal woman. And in that piece, she makes it clear that she wasn't out to get these guys. That wasn't her purpose, or dox them. She actually was curious if any real connections could be made despite the country's severe political divisions. Did she really think? Come on. To meet these men, she created a profile on a conservative dating app where she honestly described herself as a Republican curious woman, posted real photos of herself. From May to November, she matched with 60 men and went on 26 dates. Most of the men she met immediately said they expected their partner to be an unvaccinated white woman who would quit her job and commit to homeschooling children. She even went out with one guy who years earlier had sent her a death threat that said, "I'll kill you slowly," when she was working as a magazine editor covering sexual assault and abortion rights. On the date, he got worked up, grabbed her wrist tightly and said this: "If we lived in a different time, we would be hanging white liberal whores in the town square and dragging them through the streets for the lies they spread." On another date, she asked a guy who she dubs Tom about the term biblical patriarchy. He quoted a Bible passage and said, "Women should be submissive to their husbands, and some people believe they should be trained. It's about knowing your role in nature. It's undesirable for women to be too independent. As a man, I want to take care of you, and I believe in that biology." The liberal women I've dated emasculate men with their aggressive energy. Boy, I know somebody like that. I had a conversation with a guy who basically told me that. A 35-year-old she calls Brian told her, "A real man provides discipline, and any talking back or acting out is asking for punishment." Here she is describing another date.
One of these guys brought me to a political meeting.
And did they talk about politics?
Barely. They talked about, it was a bunch of men complaining about girlfriends and wives, regurgitating Andrew Tate type of advice about how to train your girlfriend, how to train your wife to be submissive. And so this group was supposed to be a political group, but they're talking about relationship problems. And the fact that that's what most of the time was spent on, you don't need to be a neo-Nazi. You need therapy.
Okay, so another guy also admitted to having a swastika tattoo. Eventually, she found commonalities between most of the men she was meeting, aside from their obvious misogyny. "A lot of my dates seemed to express that they felt lost without a solid definition of what a man is. And even if they did feel like they checked all the boxes for some specified male role, they still felt like they were getting left behind. Many of their ideologies seemed to be built on this perceived rejection and a desire to revert back to how things used to be. A conclusion I came to is that these men feel like most people, including the mass media, don't take the time or have no interest in taking the time to understand them or where they come from. Valid or not, this seemed to compound their feelings of isolation, which in turn bred a lack of curiosity on their part, furthering their own intolerances. Unsurprisingly, almost all these guys had another thing in common. Listen.
She said the men she dated got all their news and information from the so-called manosphere.
They did not listen to anything else. They're only listening to independent media, and they're only listening to men talking to men.
The manosphere is made up of macho podcasters and influencers.
There's no such thing as an independent female.
Most women have zero concept of like money.
Females don't have independent thought.
The thing about these guys is their biggest support system is online, but that also is very isolating, and isolation is what breeds hatred.
So after all of those dates, how did this thing end for Vera? Well, she says after these dates, I started to answer my own questions. I was too different from them in ways that made romantic or sexual attraction impossible. Despite my willingness to be open to anything, none of my dates progressed beyond talking. I mean, I have a question about how open she really was. I mean, there's entrenched first person reporting, but you're still coming to the circumstance as you're showing up as who you are. But I guess first, I'm curious what you think of just taking on this assignment in the first place as some kind of investigative journalism.
Yeah, boy, I'm so conflicted on this. And I'm not sure where I come out on it. Maybe we'll figure it out as we talk it through, right? So number one, I'm 100% with you. Come on, you weren't really gonna date those guys. Come on, right? Like, and I think she's saying that to kind of make it seem like, no, I'm not taking advantage of them. And I came in with an open mind, right? So on the other hand, she got amazing information. So I don't know, like I'm kind of torn on it. On that front. And then for the guys, so the part of the reason that they want to go back to the way things were is because, and I feel bad saying this, like the guys that were described, some of them are just awful human beings, right? The swastikas and the grabbing of her wrist and talking about beating women, just as despicable as you could be. These guys, unfortunately, they're not able to compete in the modern day and be able to, date women that they want to, and they get angrier and angrier, and then that isolation happens. And so the only thing they could think of, the only thing that resonates with them is, well, what if we could go back to when men controlled women and did it through violence? And so that way they couldn't disagree with us; they'd have to say yes, right? And so that is an enormous admission of defeat that you just couldn't figure out how to succeed in relationships in the modern world, right? And so, and I think that she's absolutely right that they get into the spiral, right? First, they have the issues to begin with. Secondly, they then look for an excuse. Guys like Andrew Tate give them the excuse, and then they start becoming more misogynistic. And then that's not how this, I mean, there's plenty of misogyny in the world, but that is not how you're going to be able to successfully date in America these days, right? So that leads to more failure and more isolation and more anger and frustration and more hatred. And then they think, well, maybe that's the answer, more anger and hatred. And then they start going towards white nationalism and other like evils that come along with that spiral, right? So, and I think she did it kind of a really good job of exposing like the variety there and the depth of it, right? So you're getting a range of guys from bad to horrible. You're getting a range of like how they get down the rabbit hole, like a broad understanding of it. So there was a lot of value in it. At the same time, leading them to believe you're on a real date when I don't think those were real dates at all. It does make me a little uncomfortable. So I don't know how to resolve that. So, okay, now that I said that, back to you. What do you?
Well, I get what you're saying there about she tricked them. But look, with this online dating, that goes on every day. Everyone's showing up as somebody else, and then in person, it's like, excuse me. So I can probably get past that. The one thing that as I'm reading through some of her observations, these are some extreme examples, like you said, tattoos and white national and all kinds of stuff. But I did a focus group during the presidential campaign, Black men, right? And not all of them, but the majority, I would say, some of these same, and this is just one snapshot. Okay, it wasn't scientific. I'm not saying black men only think, but some of the things that these guys, according to Vera, represented about a better time and a man should lead, and they were talking about Kamala Harris as, she's too mouthy. She's too, her reasons were not your reasons, okay, Cenk, for their reasons for not voting for her. It was that, and by the way, why'd she pick that guy instead of one of us? And so this runs the gamut. And I hear this a lot from some guys who I know who say, you would emasculate someone. This is why, I'm happy in my house alone. So it's fine for now, okay? But I'm just telling you what they say. They don't like a big mouth, okay? And I think that that's something that is not just, doesn't just belong to guys who have swastikas on their arms and tattoos and things. There's a lot to examine here. I do agree with you though when you say these are people who feel defeated and can't compete. If I wanted something, I would get after it, right? Not just think, well, because this or that, I don't get a fair shake in this world. But that's it's interesting what she did. A little contrived, I think, but I still found it interesting.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I'm landing on contrived, but definitely interesting. And so now back to the main issue of the guys there. You put it so well in so many ways, and I want to really emphasize this because I think this is important. So for the guys who are at the bottom of the rabbit hole that went all the way down that rabbit hole, and they're, whatever their race is, but they've got these crazy thoughts about a man or woman shouldn't have independent thought or doesn't have independent thought, and we should have consequences for their disagreeing with me and that kind of nonsense talk. Look, if they take any kind of action towards that, that's easy, arrest, etc. Right? I'm not talking about speech. I'm talking you hit someone. There's got to be. You want to talk about consequences? There's got to be real consequence for that, right? So we're not having any of that. We're not having any of that, right? But for the guys who are at the beginning of the rabbit hole, like we on the left, I feel do too much of, ha, you're a loser, you couldn't compete, etc. And I want to be clear that that's not what I mean. I mean, like, I get it, guys. You're having trouble competing. And I've said this for many years now. I had trouble competing, right? And I was a nerd. I was a significant nerd. And I was super nervous around women, right? Around girls and stuff like that. And I didn't know how to get there. And slowly I figured it out. And so the answer isn't being antagonistic to women. That is definitely not the right answer, right? The answer isn't insulting women. That is not the right answer, right? And the answer isn't, hey, give up or etc. Or for us to go ha to them, right? I think the answer is showing them, hey, how do you do it? Not in a patronizing way, but in a way like, look, guys, I'll tell you my point of view on it. The number one thing that will help you in that regard is confidence, okay? Yep. And not like in an ugly way, just in a strong, real way. Secure with yourself, and this is what I'm going to do in the world, this is what I'm doing in the world, this is what I want to accomplish, this is who I am, this is my beliefs, and holding strong to that. And when you do that, I think that's what people respect, and that's what folks, I mean, you want to talk about biology, that's what folks are looking for. A strong man doesn't beat up on other people. A strong man isn't insecure and doesn't lash out. A strong man does his own thing and then tries to find someone who loves that and works with them on that, right? And is a partnership. I think you'd be far better off going in that direction. But Sharon, that's my guess as a guy. What do you think?
I think you could have you should maybe take that on the road and think how many people you could help by just talking about your experience. But I agree with you. Confidence to me is the sexiest thing. I tend to think you don't even, looks are one thing, but it's not lasting. Like you get to know someone, like we all know someone who's beautiful, but like their behavior's so ugly, we can't see that anymore. And the reverse is true too. At least that's my experience, that boy, if you get me up here and I'm attracted to that energy and you're confident, like you said, unwavering, not, closed-minded, but like, this is who I am, unapologetically. That's a beautiful thing, because there are people in both sexes, but I'll just go with women who are gonna test you too. A nervous guy, a nervous jank all those years ago, there's a certain type that would seize on that and kind of, poke at that. So yeah, it's interesting, that's all. But I thought that was it. You were so vulnerable there, very vulnerable, Jank. That's wonderful. And now look at you, no one would ever believe that. No one ever believed that.
Well, I don't know about that. I think some people would believe it.
So
but
cute.
Yeah, but that hey, look. Last thing I'll say is, we all have lives, right? And none of them are perfect. And we all go through roller coasters, and we all have our ups and our downs. Just don't get too down when you're down. Know that you're gonna get back up, right? And if you have that confidence, it'll help you not just with women, but in life. Yeah. And the only confidence you need is not that you're going to be spectacular and you're the greatest or any of that. It's just that you're gonna be you, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the confidence you need, and that's what'll help you in all of life.
Wow, I love it. I love it, every bit of it. Wow, this could be like a late night radio show. We just had a few more of those stories, don't you think? I love it. It's helping people.
Or we take this to the Breakfast Club. And
wonderful. Yeah, I would love it, love it. That was special, very nice.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.